Charles, any interest in Return to Monkey Island? Yes, it's a cool game. Actually, I really liked Freddy Farkas. Yeah, that was a cool game as well. Charles, what do you think of the Tornado Cash sanctions? Now, that's a very interesting one. It's a very unique one. So there's a court case, Dan Bernstein versus the Ninth Court of Circuit Appeals, which ruled that code is free speech. So the protocol and developer understanding that we have as developers is that when we write code, it's an expression. And as long as we don't get involved in the running and use of that code for purposes, we're just writing it. It's like writing a book. So, for example, you could write a book saying, here's how you make cyanide. Here's how you build a bomb, these types of things. And for the most part, that's just words. You're not really telling people, go do this. You're just writing stuff down. Now, in a free society, we generally allow people to do these types of things. And it is deeply uncomfortable when they start saying no, because the problem is that it's not clear where to cut that and where intentionality comes into play. So generally look for a conspiracy to commit. So, for example, you write the book, but then you also start distributing the book amongst extremist groups and making statements like, you should use this to go bomb some people. Then you've kind of crossed a threshold of an academic conversation and the sharing of knowledge to knowledge with intent to do something. So generally, if you'd see a sanction with a developer of an open source project, like a Tornado Cache or some dark pool, or like the Silk Road, for example, then you'd say, oh, well, they created it and then they operated it and used it and profited from it. And if that was the case, this would be another Silk Road, another issue, just like any other. The problem here is they went farther back to an area that seems to be unconstitutional and said just by participating and writing that code and being involved in that, it somehow means there was an intent and an operation of that system. Now, a strict interpretation of that would mean that basically they're asserting that software developers are accountable for how their software is used, regardless of whether they can control that or not, which is an extremely dangerous precedent. For example, if you want to go really far and extreme, the Linux kernel developers are creating the kernel of an operating system. North Korea could take that kernel, build a proprietary OS, and use that to be the operating system of an ICBM. So hypothetically, you could say the maintainers of the Linux kernel are contributing to the nuclear weapons program of North Korea. You could say that if you wanted to. So obviously that's absurd. But the problem is that the same legal structure that would allow you to infer blame on the Tornado Cache developer if they weren't involved in the use and operation of the system, they just wrote the code, could technically be reused this way. And this is why the EFF and others who are in the privacy space and in the digital rights space are rightfully so extremely scared about the precedent that something like this is going to set. So I don't think it's constitutional. And I do think that they're going to need to produce some evidence beyond just the discussion, just the code, in order to be able to make the charges stick, because there's already a court case about this, Dan Bernstein versus the Ninth Circuit, versus the government. It was the Ninth Circuit, and he won. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that pushes through.